This is Talk is Sheep, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Society of BC, brought to you by Sitka Game. Come along as we bring conversations that matter to you into the high alpine. Renée, the most frequented podcast host in the history of Talk is Sheep. Welcome back to the show. Great to see you.
Thanks so much, Kyle. Great to be back. Thank you.
You know, it's funny what happens, and like for our listeners, what happens is you and I get offline and we get chatting. We talk pretty regularly. Certainly not weekly, but we do. And we're like, there's all this good content. I'm like, why are we not talking about this on the podcast? Because it's all stuff about our community, about hunting, about women, about predators, about like a million other things. It's like, no, like this is podcast material. Let's talk about it. And so welcome back. Great to have you here.
Well, I always love chatting with you, whether it's offline or on the podcast. So thanks for having me back.
Awesome. So you have had an incredibly busy year, a lot going on, and just really excited to catch up on a whole bunch of stuff. I've kind of been watching what's going on with social, and I've seen you've been out in Texas. Obviously, we just wrapped up the Women Hunt Field to Fork program. Lots to talk about there. So I guess for our listeners, and I think a lot of our listeners know who you are, but give us the 30,000-foot view of who Renée Thornton is, what you do.
Right on. Well, yes, Renée Thornton. I'm the founder and chair of the Women Hunt program for the Wild Sheep Foundation. I was an adult onset hunter. I love hunting. I'm a fly fisher. And most of all, I love to travel, and I'm a world explorer.
Yeah, and you just had an epic journey. So, and that's one of the things I really wanted to dive into today. So, I know you've spoken in the past about where you've been and what you've done in the 6 continents around the world, and you were talking about going to the dark continent, which you and Gray managed to sneak away for this past couple of months. So yeah, I want to talk about Africa and see what's going on there.
Yeah, it was really incredible for me. I had achieved my 6th continent, Antarctica, in 2010, and I had taken a year off, and I took a sabbatical from work. I like to tell people that I was 39 at the time, and I actually was going through like an early midlife crisis. And so I was able to take a year off, and I solo backpacked through Central and South America and the South Pacific. And I took advantage of being down south on the tip of Argentina, and I planned this icebreaking. I was on an icebreaker vessel and sailed to Antarctica. And I was going to go to Africa later like into 2011 on the back end of my sabbatical. But if people might remember what happened in early 2011 on the continent, there was the Arab Spring. And I just didn't feel very safe traveling as a solo female at that point in time. So I pivoted and did some different things. So it's taken me this long to finally get to the dark continent and achieve my 7th continent. And, the trip was astonishing and exceptional in so many ways. And I think I underestimated, Kyle, what it was going to be like for me while I was in Namibia, processing the impact of achieving my 7th and final continent. And it wasn't that I was preoccupied, but I was quieter than I normally am, and I was more thoughtful than I expected to be. It really owned a lot of real estate in my mind through the whole trip, that I had achieved this really monumental step that not too many people get to do. So it was really incredible on so many levels.
Okay, I got to ask you this: with the trip to South America and then the trip to South Antarctica, would you do it again solo as a female at like 12 years later, 10 years later, whatever it is?
Oh, that's
just curious.
Question. I would. I think things have changed enough on a global scale that I probably need to reassess how to approach it. But I generally felt safe during that experience, but I also made wiser choices than I might have made if I was in a group. I was careful not to be intoxicated and in a situation where I could be more vulnerable or things like that, right? But no, I was generally felt really safe. There were a couple little instances where I had a few little run-ins, but nothing extraordinary. So I think, yes, I would do it again. I don't think my husband would like it, but I would do it again.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, no, I'd feel the same way. There's no way Melanie's going to South America and Antarctica without me. Probably because I want to go as much as she does, but yeah, fair. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about. Well, I know that you've had a lot going on this past year, and I don't need to get into your personal life or what's going on there, but I know you've had just one of those years. And then you guys had this chance to go to Africa, and I know there was a lot of excitement. Talk about the build up to Africa, what it was like being there, and sort of, on retrospect, what it was like. Talk about sort of your mindset as you sort of had that experience.
Yeah. You know, we had started planning for this a couple of years ago. So 2024 marked our 5-year wedding anniversary. And we were thinking ahead to that and decided that it would be a great way to celebrate that new milestone in our marriage. And we had been working with friends of ours, Deneen and Gijsbert van der Westhuizen, who own Aru Safaris in Namibia. They have two different lodges where they host clients for hunting opportunities. And we enjoyed the last year of planning with them for this trip. And you're right, we might as well talk about it. 2024 was a challenging year for me. I had some pretty major health issues. The good news is everything's okay, but it wasn't okay for a while. A sudden cancer diagnosis, a tumor in my thyroid that needed to be removed. And it was a difficult, challenging year. And so it put that, I'm sharing that because it's material to the whole journey, because there was a
Hmm.
where we weren't sure we could make the trip anymore because the tumor was growing so quickly. The surgery had to happen rapidly and needed to stay stateside and recover before I could travel. So there were a lot of balls in the air. And when it was stressful enough dealing with a cancer diagnosis, like anybody who's gone through that would know, or had somebody they love go through it, and then to face the uncertainty of whether we could have this wonderful trip that we'd been planning for so long, maybe not materialize, just added a level of emotion that we would have otherwise not gone through. But the great news is that my surgery was successful, and while they're monitoring me closely, I have every reason to believe that it won't come back, and that's great. And the awesome news is that we were still able to do the trip. So, it really was a monumental trip on so many levels.
So, how much did sort of, these health issues that you were working through throughout the year impact that trip? So, was it like when you went on that trip, it was like, so first of all, you got to, for the listeners, for me, I'm thinking, this is 10 years or 15 years pent up energy about going to Africa. You talked about doing this when you did that journey in years ago, right? So there's that aspect of it. And then, there's your mortality's under question. You're like, okay, am I even going to be healthy enough to travel? And then finally, and then just the busy life and busy schedule and everything going on, and you make it there. So, how much was that playing on your mind with trying to get to Africa? And then I want to understand what it's like when you stepped off the airplane, you actually achieved it. You're like, because how many people achieve the 7 continent thing? Like it's probably less than 0.25% of the population. Like it's so
Far
tiny.
less. So tiny, yeah. So on that question, Kyle, roughly 60,000 tourists visit Antarctica annually. So, of course, there's
Mm.
scientists who go there and work on the research stations, and there's a few small army bases. But if you back that limited number of people out, there's about 60,000 tourists who go annually. So, 8 billion people, 60,000, that is less than 0.001% of the world's population. So that's the answer. It's
And that's not even considering if they went to the other continents. They're just going to Antarctica, let alone the other ones. So yeah.
So, but yeah, there were lots of things that were still weighing on me because my surgery was only 6.5 weeks before the trip.
Ooh.
So, for thyroid diseases such as cancer or hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism, they're often treated with a thyroid replacement. For myself, having the thyroid removed under a cancer diagnosis, we had to wait. The endocrinologist waited 6 weeks before doing a blood run. So I had my blood test done 2 days before we flew, and turned out that I needed to get replacement, a hormone, a thyroid hormone replacement prescribed to me. So that was, a blood draw, waiting for results, getting a prescription filled within 48 hours of flying. It added a whole other level. And then I had been warned by the endocrinologists that getting that sweet spot on managing your thyroid is like can take as long as 6 months, and I'm still going through that journey. We still don't have the dose right, so that timing was not great, because here we were on this massive overseas trip, and I was adjusting to this health issue and this new supplement that wasn't at the right dosage. So there was a whole bunch of stuff around that we don't need to get into, but it was just part of it. So it detracted for sure, but I did my best not to let it consume our energy and my emotions on that trip. I had bigger and more fun things to celebrate. So
That's awesome. So talk about stepping off that airplane did you guys fly into Joburg or where'd you fly into initially?
yeah, we had to fly into Cape Town actually. So
Okay.
I formally achieved my seventh continent in South Africa in Cape Town. We
Uh,
were there for one night, and then we flew to Namibia from then. But it was just a tremendous. It's really hard even now to describe it. But from that long red eye flight from Newark to Cape Town was it was obnoxious. I think if I remember correctly, it was almost 11 hours. Like it was really long, and 13 hours, something like that. So, you're all bleary eyed and tired, but we were flying into Cape Town, and I could not like stare out the window and just I even as soon as I sighted land, it was just a phenomenal thing for me to realize what I was about to achieve. And when you know, Gray and I were gripping hands, and he was so happy for me too, and which was wonderful to share that with him. Um, it was just tremendous when the wheels touched down. You know, I, I didn't shout, but I guess a subdued shout on the plane. So I didn't startle my fellow passengers, but I yeah, happy, and then getting off the plane and actually setting foot on South African soil in the seventh continent was very, very overwhelming. It was really emotional and really joyous.
awesome. Well, congratulations. Super exciting. And so that's just getting there, achieving that goal. But then you had this tremendous trip as well. So let's talk a little about your experience what was the highlights of, I guess, South Africa or Africa, Namibia. I think you guys spent a bunch of time there. And the hunting experience. I want to learn all about that.
Yeah, for sure. So, Deneen and Heisbert are friends of mine, and Deneen built a really fun itinerary for us. And it was interesting, when she proposed the itinerary, she said, um, there's going to be a little bit of hunting at the beginning, but I really want to showcase Namibia. She and Heisbert love their country, of course. They're proud Namibians. It's a beautiful country, as I discovered. And Heisbert is a private pilot. He holds his private pilot's license, and he owns a plane. And so the itinerary had 4 days of hunting at the beginning, 2 days at one lodge, Veronica Lodge, and 2 days at Kalakwa Lodge. And then from that point on, we were flying to different areas of Namibia with Deneen and Heisbert and another couple friends of theirs. And we were able to see the diversity of Namibia. We went to all sorts of different areas. And so it was a really exciting trip. And we'll go back another time for a pure hunting, plains game kind of style safari. But I was glad I was. It was a real privilege to see so many parts of this beautiful country with Namibians, and of course it was exceptional to be flown around by Heisbert. That was a real privilege too, and it would have taken us some areas. It had taken us over 3 days to drive to, and we were able to fly there in a couple of hours. So we really did see huge swaths of Namibia very easily. So we were delighted with the itinerary that she built for us. She was cognizant of the fact that it was my seventh continent. She was very happy that we chose Namibia, and her and Heisbert to experience this trip together for our 5-year anniversary with them. And so it was a really fun itinerary. The hunting was great too, but and Kyle, I can't remember. Have you been?
No, I've never been. We're supposed to go in 26, so we've got a trip booked with a kind of a big group of us here in BC. That I think there's about 14 of us trying to go over. So we've got the dates locked in and everything. So yeah, we're planning 26. So
That's a big group. Holy. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So
Yeah, so it was really interesting for me to learn how to hunt differently. The African style of hunting, the safari style versus what I'm accustomed to, Western mountain hunting. I really enjoyed it. It's very comfortable, and there's something to be said for that. I really enjoyed. I enjoyed being able to drive around and see such large quantities and diversity of game. It was really
mm,
something to see. And it took adjustment to get used to having a pH and trackers, and you have this whole crew with you. Their jobs are, they're in the hospitality business, like no one, like just like any other outfitter is. They're there to guide you on hunts, but they're also in the hospitality business. And what I learned is, I'm an independent woman. I don't mind carrying my own bags and stuff like that. And it's just a no-go. They handle everything for you. And that took a bit of an adjustment. It wasn't a bad thing though. But no, it was really fantastic. And, we went on some great stalks, and I was surprised at how much movement we did. I was glad for it though, but we would drive around in the Jeeps for sure, but then we would get out and stalk for miles. So we got some really, really good hikes in. Some of the Kalakwa Lodge that I mentioned is in a mountain range. So, there was good terrain there to get moving through. It was great. And unfortunately, I was very sick the first 2 days. I got sick overnight in Cape Town. So by the time we landed in Namibia the next day, I was pretty puny. So the first 2 days of hunting at the Veronica Lodge were not great. I actually missed some hunting time while I was recovering, but it was exceptional.
mm. So you see all this abundance of game. There's animals everywhere. Is it question the North American model of wildlife conservation? Do we need to go to an African style, a high fence, and stone sheep in your backyard type thing? I'm joking a bit, but it is interesting. It is such a different model of wildlife conservation, but it works really well for them, right? It's been very successful. The model they use in Africa, it's been sustainable, and in certain areas anyway. So.
Yeah, and appreciate that. I'm far more familiar with the NA model than I am with any African approaches that are used, but I certainly have some basic understanding of it, and I've only seen the Namibian way, right? For sure it works, and I know I appreciate your joke, but sometimes, right? You ask yourself, but. I was really struck when we went into the Caprivi Strip. We spent a couple of nights up in the Caprivi, and we were no longer hunting at that point. We were just touring and going on game drives and other activities. And in the Caprivi, there were times where it felt like I was in the Lion King. And I'm not even joking. There would be bodies of water and there would be wildlife everywhere. Massive herds, multiple herds of elephant, and we saw herds of Cape buffalo, and I can't even giraffe, and so many different the diversity, and they were all coming in, of course, to the water source, and it was like a scene from a movie. It was tremendous.
Mm.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's interesting. Like there's an abundance of wildlife there, and it's so interesting because Africa is it's controversial, as we know, as all get out. And then on top of it, there's so many different models and scenarios with bans and restrictions, and then hunting and no hunting, and every country's a little bit different. None of them are exactly the same either, right? It's not like we have a similar system to North America here, where it's kind of this blanket model. But it's very interesting. I don't know enough about it, and I've always enjoyed talking to Sue about it. I think maybe one day the three of us should jump on a call with Sue Tidwell and chat about this again, because there's just so much to explore there. And I've never been, so having to listen to you guys that have been on the ground there and seen it and experienced it. And I think until you do that, you can't really comment. It's not. There's so many people that keyboard warriors that sit at home and sort of chastise hunting in Africa, and they've never stepped on the continent, right? So it's
Just they probably haven't done enough research either.
yeah, yeah. I certainly haven't, but it's sure fun to listen to people that have been there and experienced it, and um, yeah, cool. There's so much we could talk about Africa, but we got a whole bunch of things we want to plow through today. So, okay, so founder and chair of Women Hunt, you guys have done. This has been a huge year for you. You've made some pretty big changes to the maybe not the program so much, but added new components to Women Hunt. You've made some strategic changes around your committee and some really cool things. I know that you've been, when I was on the board, we talked a little bit more about this, but you guys have done some long-term strategic planning to sort of make sure that there's, sort of a long-term existence, a legacy for this program, so that, if for some reason you step back. And I kind of wonder, was this sort of tied to some of your health concerns, or you're like, oh shit, I got to get this program sorted so that there's, if I end up sick here and I can't do anything, what happens to Women Hunt? And honestly, I worry about that a lot with a whole bunch of things, like with the society or the foundation, people are driving these programs and they're amazing, like Women Hunt, like the incredible work that you're doing. But it's like, what happens if Renee doesn't do this? Like then what? So I think that strategic planning is absolutely critical. And I know you've done some of that. So let's dive in. Where are we at with Women Hunt? There's lots to talk about.
So much to talk about. Yeah. So, for the listeners who are already familiar, our core Women Hunt program is still our Field to Fork opportunity. And we've been blessed to get a lot of great women out of the province of British Columbia. Rebecca Peters from the class of 21, Anika Hodgson, and Kirsten Serby out of the class of 22. And then this year, Jenna Rist, who was selected from the class of 24 and you had on the show a couple weeks ago. And she's such a fascinating woman with the blood tracking dogs and her PhD and all the rest of it. She's great. And those four women are just four of many who have come through our program, and most of them are just absolutely converted. Gray started to use the word evangelist, and that's what I realized. This is what Women Hunt graduates are. They're evangelists, and they're not just evangelists for the role of women in hunting or the role of women in conservation, but they're also evangelists for the wild sheep resource, because we pounded into them. Some of them come in not even aware of what a wild sheep is, let alone what the Wild Sheep Foundation is or our chapters and affiliates. So we're building these acolytes, these evangelists, and they're doing extraordinary things. And I'm talking about this because it ties into your questions around succession planning and longevity of the program. And I had already started thinking about succession planning before I learned of my diagnosis, but definitely my diagnosis really heightened it for me. But I had already started thinking about it. I love what I do. I volunteer as we've discussed in the past. It's a love project for me, and it brings me great fulfillment. I almost get greater joy from bringing along people than I do from my own hunting experiences. And but it's not something that's sustainable for me to do forever, nor should I do it forever. At some point, I need to back away, and fresh blood needs to come in with a new energy and new ideas. So, that's all part of it. And we did shift the committee structure a little bit, and we still need to shift it a little bit more to help us achieve those important goals around legacy. And quite frankly, that means development, right? So, we need to bring in some particular talent and skills for that. I'm not the girl for that. I don't even like bargaining. I pay retail all the time, Kyle, right? So I'm not the girl for development. So, but, some talent there, but, it is an exciting time. And I'll talk to you for sure about growth and changes, but succession planning is an important thing that we're working on.
That's awesome. Okay, let's dive right into it.
Okay, so again, Women Hunt, our core programming is hunting and firearms training, and then coupled with mentorship through our generous chapters and affiliates, and community, as well as the giving back, which is, as we've discussed before, such a key component. We want these women to give back to Foundation, Women Hunt, their chapter and affiliate, and their community, right? In addition to that, in the last 18 months or so, we've been getting lots of feedback from women within the wild sheep community, the broader one, as well as women outside of it, because our growth has expanded beyond the wild sheep enthusiast world. And we've been hearing from women who say, this is awesome and I love it and I want to get involved, but I don't fit the newer hunter narrative. Can you build something for me? So that's where we're leveraging women in hunting. And to take everybody back, when this all started initially, we were called the Women in Hunting Initiative. And we trademarked that, we registered it. And after a couple of years, we realized we were way past being an initiative and we wanted a pithier name for our program. We rebranded to Women Hunt, but we retained our trademark for Women in Hunting and we kept using it to keep it active. And so we thought, let's leverage that and rebirth it. And so, for folks who are interested in what is Women in Hunting, well, it's a community that we're building within Women Hunt, and it's designed for women of all ages who are, whether you're a hunter or not, it doesn't matter. What's important is that you are a wildlife conservationist and you understand and support the role of hunting in the wildlife conservation model. And that's as simple as it is. So you can be a guide, an outfitter, a 40-year experienced hunter, a new hunter, someone in the middle. You can be a fly angler, a woman who doesn't do any of those things but supports all of it and works on conservation projects, a young lady just getting started, whatever, the gamut. It's intended for all. And it's also intended for all the great guys out there who love and support the women that in their lives who do all these great things. So, we always talk about when we were just getting started here on this community, but we always talk about encouraging the guys to brag on their women too. So, it's really for everyone. And so, our vision, and Kyle, I know we've talked about this on previous podcasts, but we've had seminars at the Sheep Show over the years, and we've gotten feedback in those seminars from our attendees. And one of the things they want is a community for where they can go to get resources, where they can easily find trusted, vetted partners, where they can find culinary information, opportunities to volunteer on conservation projects, hunting opportunities for groups of ladies. No differently than guys who like to go out as a group of guys and do things together. Surprise, so do women, right? So it's not about, we don't want to hunt with our husbands or our sons or our fathers or whatever, but we also sometimes just want to hang out with the girls. So we're going to be working on developing all those pieces under the Women in Hunting community. And we're really excited. One of the ways we're going to kickstart this whole community. We're running the promotion right now. We kind of featured it a little bit on Spike Camp last month, but this is a women hunt driven thing. It's a new activity at the Sheep Show for your listeners who are going to be showing up in Reno in January. It's a new social hour on Thursday night between 5 and 6 p.m. in the foyer outside the Tuscany Ballroom at the Peppermill Resort. So very similar to Wednesday night's beer reception that Stone Glacier sponsors. It's open to everybody. You get it's free beer or bubbly. We also have NA non-alcoholic alternatives for those who don't want to drink alcohol. But come in and get a free drink while you're waiting for those ballroom doors to open. And instead of spending $20 on a drink in the Circle Bar, just come and get a free drink from us. And it's a great way for everybody right before the doors open to socialize, build that energy before you go in for the banquet for the evening. And one of the fun things we're doing for the ladies is we're asking, again, women of all ages to go on our website. We have a submission page there. Submit photos and just a little description. Or you can write a long story if you want to, but we just need a little bit of a description of what the photos are about. And again, it can be in any of those categories I mentioned earlier. And it's all spelled out on our website. And submit that. And what we'll do is you get entered, all entrants, whether you're at the sheep show or not, you need not be present to win, but all entrants will be entered for some great prizes we're going to give away during that social hour. We're giving away a Weatherby rifle, a Weatherby shotgun, and then a third prize that's more feminine to, for lack of a better word, so, jewelry and a handbag and things of that nature. So I really encourage all the ladies, young and old, the guys who want to brag on the women in their lives, get on our website, submit those photos, do a little write-up, get entered for some free prizes. And during the social hour, we're going to co-opt the big screens right outside the ballroom, and we're just going to have all those images rotating through, highlighting the great stuff that people are doing out there in the support of wildlife conservation, or their field photos when they're hunting or fishing or camping or whatever it is they want to submit and feature.
Oh, that's awesome, Renee. It's really exciting, and you had me at free drinks, so and the alcoholic kind, just saying.
Yeah.
But no, I'm really excited about that. Melanie and I are obviously going to be there, and this has had such an impact on my life personally because Women Hunt influenced Melanie so much, my wife. And it's I want to talk about the event for sure, but I also think you brought up something really important there, that this is not Women Hunt is not just about women. It's about it. This is an inclusive program. Like obviously the Field to Fork program, you have like new hunters that are female that are in the program, but women in hunting is not just about women. It's about the community. It's about our wild sheep family. So I think that's an important distinction for some people that maybe don't quite get it. I've always felt very inclusive in this. I've been to some of the events at the shows and stuff like that. And I think that that's an important part of what you guys are doing, that this is well beyond just women. This is creating, like you said, even these new, I was going to say disciples, but I think you use the word evangelists, and it's so true. And we see it in our own community. We see like Jana Rist, who you mentioned earlier. She's coming, she's volunteering, she's involved with the society. She's somebody new to the program because of Women Hunt, right? And I think that's awesome. We need to cater to everybody. We need to be inclusive, and this is just one important channel, and I think it's amazing. I think it's a really great program, Renee. But okay, sorry for the diatribe. Back to the event. Really exciting. So for people that want to enter their photos and their submissions, so you said go to the website, so wildsheepfoundation.org, and then click on Women Hunt, and you enter it there.
Yeah. So when you go to the Wild Sheep Foundation's website, along the top, there's a category called Hunt. And if you click on Hunt, you'll see Women Hunt in the list. When you go to the Women Hunt section of the website, you'll see an area for women in hunting. Go into that area, and there's your submission. And we're probably going to streamline this here in the last month in the push to the show and have it right on the landing page of the Women Hunt presence in the banner at the top. But Julie Tripp with the foundation, who does our website work for us, she's just got to work on that. But that is how to find it. And I'm hoping, Kyle, we can put it up at the top of your liner notes possibly for the show.
Absolutely.
And more easy for folks to find. But yeah, that's how you get there. And I appreciate your comments very much, Kyle. You've always been, in a professional capacity with the society, so supportive of Women Hunt, but also on a personal level. And I'm always so happy to hear about the impact it's had for Melanie and your personal lives. But yeah, we've always been delighted at our seminars, or last year at the film premiere in the Full Curl Cinema of Beyond Bonds, the film that Rebecca and I, the Society and Foundation and Women Shaping Conservations and Women Hunt did together. The turnout always has about at least a third are male in our rooms, and we're always so happy to see the guys turn out. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's when I go to our shows, quite often it's sort of like there's a lot of men there, right? And it just, to get more of that the couples or the family feel, like that's just a great, like we talk about our wild sheep family, which tends to mostly historically been just a bunch of dudes, and families aren't just a bunch of dudes typically, right? There's a lot of diversity, and so it's great to see a more emphasis and stuff where a lady can show up and actually enjoy herself, and like, oh, this is actually content that's tailored for me. That's really, I'm going to enjoy this, and it's in line with our mission and what we're doing. So, yeah, I think I love it. I think it's very cool. So,
I want also, Kyle. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I also wanted to mention that we are returning to a seminar this year. As I mentioned last year, we did the film premiere, and we forewent the seminar, but we're returning to a seminar this year. So that'll be Saturday afternoon at the Reno Sparks Convention Center, I believe from 12:30 to 2. And our theme this year is safety and preparedness in the wilderness and the outdoors. So it's a topic applicable to anybody, but with a little bit of a focus for ladies. But our panelists will be women, but women with great experience and know-how on that topic, on those topics.
Are you able to share who's on that panel, or are you guys still working on that? That'd be
Refining it a little bit, but
okay, cool.
Rachel Attila,
Awesome.
right out of BC, as you all know, and also serves on the Women Hunt Committee. She'll be on the panel. We're working on another guide. Rachel's going to be really focused on gear preparation, but we're just working on another female hunting guide who will be more on to talk about more on the safety, non-gear aspects of safety and preparedness in the wilderness. Jana Waller and then a couple of industry folks we're still smoothing out, but it should be 4 to 5 panelists, and then we're going to have interactive stations available afterwards for people to stay in the room and get more information on whether it's gear or extraction services or health and fitness. And I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, one of our panelists is Whitney Trammell, who's going to be working with Women Hunt in the future on developing a nice entry-level fitness regime for women who are a bit couch potato-y like me, who, are reasonably fit but need to get a little bit fitter. So Whitney Trammell will be on our panel as well. I neglected to mention her. So, these great people are going to be available after the panel discussion for more detailed conversation, whatever area of interest the attendees might have.
That's awesome. Great to see. That's such a line. I'm sorry to put you on the spot there. I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. But thank you for doing that. Sounds like Global Rescue needs to jump on as a sponsor of this. They need to send a bunch of money to Women Hunt and sponsor this program, I think, or sponsor the seminar, I'm thinking. But anyway, none of my business. Just saying.
That's working on that. So
awesome. Good for you guys. Well, that's really exciting. And what a great lineup. You look at Rachel and Jana, you can't find any more experienced people in the backcountry. Certainly not that Jana isn't, but Rachel's been doing a long time in pretty remote areas. So very exciting that you have those two. That's going to be a great panel. Okay. What else is going on? Is Josh Schwenke, is he going to be doing any stuff at the show this year?
Sure. Chef is going to be there again for us in the culinary corner. So third year, always very popular. People love his sense of humor and his stylings, and of course his free food samples. And so yes, Chef is back in the culinary corner, sponsored by Camp Chef. And he's got a fun 3 days of courses lined up, and he's doing some fun things this year. He's got guests coming in every day. So people may not be aware of this, but Jamie Teagan, who works for the Wild Sheep Foundation in Bozeman, is actually also a chef, an executive chef. And so Jamie's going to join Chef Josh on Thursday and do a culinary session of her own. And then on Saturday, Full Curl Brands, Full Curl Spirits, who are going to be exhibiting right next to the culinary corner, and our Women Hunt booth is moving into Hall 3 as well. So it's going to be culinary corner and the Women Hunt booth side by side, and Full Curl is going to be in that corner as well. They're going to be up on Saturday with Chef doing a very exclusive and special tasting. They're going to be uncorking a particular vintage. I can't remember what it is, but for those of you who enjoy finer spirits, stop by on Saturday when that uncorking is happening and get a taste of what Full Curl is going to be featuring there. It's going to be good.
What time is that? I got to get that on my schedule. I'm just kidding. I'm teasing you. But
I don't have a schedule in front of me. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm teasing you a bit.
And it's going to be,
but I'm not. I'm going for sure.
I know
So,
the schedule is going to be in the winter issue of Wild Sheep, which should be hitting
awesome.
those mailboxes any day now.
Okay, cool. And then obviously you guys do a great job of marketing at the show. For us Canadians, we're not getting mail, as you know. So, but that's all good. Everyone
Schedule's on the website.
Yeah, exactly. And then also at the show, it's so well laid out for sure. So, but that's a good impetus to stop by the Women Hunt booth at the show early on, have a discussion with the girls, and then from there, make sure you get, your timings for the seminar and for obviously the tasting as well. So
We're going to be doing
perfect.
some things in our booth differently this year too. Jamie, who runs the store for the Wild Sheep Foundation, has asked us to sell merchandise in our booth, so we're going to help out with some merchandise sales as well in our booth. And we are have every year we do a free giveaway, and we're going to have another awesome free giveaway this year. It's going to be an awesome basket from Full Curl. So people can scan a QR code in our booth and enter for that free giveaway. So there's that too. And I want to mention as well, Kyle, before we move on, about our Ruby Mayflower Blake Legacy Fund. I know many people are already aware of it. Our Legacy Fund is part of our Women Hunt growth. And Derek Blake and the committee he selected is Julie McQueen and Jana Waller. I serve on the committee in a secretarial capacity, and we've got some great things coming at the show for Ruby Mayflower Blake Legacy Fund. Another donation from Derek on Saturday night to raise money for the fund to send women on healing outdoor opportunities. We're going to start featuring more Ruby Mayflower posts on our Women Hunt social, and you'll start to see some content coming out there for our recipient this year, Gina, who went on a hunt with her daughter in October. And there's going to be a very, very short film on that at the show. In the banquet hall. So we're really proud of the Legacy Fund and its purpose. It's it's a privilege to be involved in honoring Ruby's memory and helping Derek achieve that and his vision for this fund. And the RMBLF is going to be part of our Beer and Bubbly social. They're part of Women Hunt. So people should start also to they're going to see rebranding going on. You're going to see the Women Hunt logo, the Women in Hunting logo, and the Ruby Mayflower Blake Legacy Fund logo all intertwined. So it's another really awesome part of our suite and our growth.
Oh, I'm really intrigued about this film. I didn't actually realize that you sent somebody through our MBLF on a hunt this year. I guess you don't want to give any more away than you already have because you want people to watch the film. I mean, like, did Derek guide it? What was the hunt? There's so much, but maybe should I wait for the film?
Well, I don't want to blow the first social
I
post.
get it for
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, if you
Yeah,
don't mind. A
yeah.
little.
No, I'll wait.
Okay.
Yeah, I this one brings chills to me because I've had Derek on the podcast, and then him and Ruby were going on her first sheep hunt, and we're gonna have Ruby on the podcast afterwards, and yeah, just it's our community, right? So yeah, I know you get we'll be crying on the podcast here, so I'll leave it at that. But it's such a big deal. But awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ruby was a friend to so many of us, and losing her was just such a shock, and I think for many of us we're still in shock, and so it's just great that Derek had this vision and that we were able to step up and help him achieve it. We're so proud of it.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Such a great program. Okay. Good. So I'll wait for the show. Great.
Okay,
And that's on what night is it? You're gonna stream
Saturday
near that
night.
film? Okay. Great.
It's Saturday night. Yeah, it'll run during the dinner. Uh,
Okay.
and I think it's going to be somewhere in the 3 to 5 minute length in duration. And then there'll be
Awesome.
a couple of auction items going that night to raise money for the fund.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. So on the women hunt front, do you want to talk about the class of 24? Anything else? I know we talked about you guys are coming up to the Sleuth Conservation Mountain Hunting Expo. You're going to have a booth there this year, so we're extremely excited about that. You guys have, had a huge impact in BC. We've had three of our ladies, our members, go through, and we've seen the impact it's had, and it's such a cool program. But the booth is new, so we just kind of got that sorted out this morning. So we're really excited to have you there.
Yeah, we're excited too. We had sort of started talking about this just about a week ago, and recognizing that we've really experienced exponential growth and interest in our program in the last year or two. And we really believe it's time for outreach to start occurring outside of the sheep show. You know, we already have an outreach presence. It's been 3 years now at the Wildlife Society annual conference, which is tremendous because we're having an impact with young wildlife professionals that are still in university or just coming out. So that's great. But we realized that it was time for us to have broader outreach within the wild sheep family. The Salute to Conservation was, and Mountain Hunting Expo was our first one that we thought of. You know, we've had great graduates come out, so much interest every year, applicants from British Columbia. It feels like a very natural fit for us to have. And we've got graduates on the ground who are excited to volunteer and give back. So they're going to be running the booth. And, you know, we're going to be looking at other chapters, shows as well. Like to mind quickly, that comes to mind the Eastern chapter. They have a similar sized expo as you do, and we also have a high number of graduates out of the Eastern states that they support. So, but you know, I imagine that this is just the beginning, and we'll start to have more of a presence at other areas as well. But we're super excited to be starting with you guys. It's going to be great.
Well, we're super excited to have you. And, you know, that goes to show you the evangelist side, right? You know, you have people out carrying your message now. You have graduates that are out there and, you know, speaking the language and recruiting new people and getting interest in the program. So, you know, you guys have done an amazing job and it's worked. It's a program that's worked for sure, Renee. So congrats.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Anything else on Women Hunt? Because you've had a big couple of weeks here, and you just spent some time in Texas, and I want to finish up with our podcast talking about what went on there, because that, you know, Chair Landris talks about epic shit, and some epic shit happened in Texas this past couple of weeks. So, anything else on the Women Hunt before we move on?
That's good, Kyle. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. So, tell us about your experience.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Oh my gosh. So I had the opportunity. I had put up my hand to volunteer 18 months ago with the Texas Bighorn Society and Wild Sheep Foundation supported project for Texas Parks and Wildlife of a capture and translocation of desert bighorn sheep from the Elephant Mountain, which is near Alpine, Texas, to release into the Franklin Mountains range outside of El Paso. And that project was very, very significant and important to the conservation of desert bighorn sheep in Texas. It had suffered a couple of delays, but was finally underway here in December. And I was so privileged to be part of that volunteer team. I went, just to be clear, for if anybody's got a question in their mind, this was just me as an individual volunteering. I went on under my own steam, and it was truthfully one of the most joyous and fulfilling jobs I've ever done in my life. And it was a real privilege to be assigned to a team by the Texas Parks and Wildlife manager, Desert Bighorn Sheep manager, Froilan Hernandez, who was running this project, had a tremendous job, a huge job. There was so much interest in this. It was such a busy project, and he did a phenomenal work managing that. But, you know, for people who aren't aware, and I'm not a wildlife biologist, so I'm speaking as a layman, right? But desert bighorn sheep have had experienced such a wonderful regrowth in Texas through the really hard work of professionals like Clay Brewer when he worked for Texas Parks and Wildlife, and others who worked diligently to make sure that the extirpation of desert bighorn sheep that was experienced in the 60s, that they were recovered. And they had got the populations. I learned this during the briefing in Alpine before we started the project, but the populations of desert bighorn sheep in Texas had actually enjoyed recovery to pre-extirpation levels. So they did the job. They got it done. They got the numbers back up. It was a tremendous achievement by the state and all the people involved. And then unfortunately, the growth of numbers of Aoudad in the state of Texas have negatively impacted those wild sheep populations with disease transfer. And it is a complex topic, Kyle, that far better informed people than me can dive into. But it's complex. It involves private land ownership, which we know in the state of Texas is approximately 97% of the state. Private landowners having a financial consideration at play, because the hunting of Aoudad is a financial stream for them. There's many tentacles in this topic, but the bottom line is that for people who value the conservation of wild sheep, desert bighorn sheep in Texas, the bottom line is that their numbers are plummeting and rapidly in the last few years, and that recovery is at jeopardy. So Elephant Mountain to date has been movie free, but the Aoudad surround the mountain on properties and they're moving in. So I learned that 10 Aoudad were captured on cameras on Elephant Mountain earlier this year, and 7 of them tested positive for MOVI. So the pressure was on to get this herd, or well, not the entire herd, but the goal was 40 ewes and 40 rams from this herd on Elephant Mountain captured and translocated to the Franklin Mountain Range. So that was the project, to get them while they're clean off the mountain into the Franklin Mountains. And the Franklin Mountains are surrounded on 3 sides by the city of El Paso. And then on the north side, there is a plain. I think they said it's about 25 miles long. And then there's a river, and then on the other side is New Mexico. And while there is some risk of Aoudad crossing that plain, or those desert bighorn sheep crossing that plain, they've got cameras on and they can manage that. It's one area only, and then the city protects that range naturally. The Aoudad won't go through the city, right? So it is, I heard the language being used during this project from Texas Parks and Wildlife professionals. This project was very significant. It was considered kind of the last chance for desert bighorn sheep in Texas. So it was a real privilege to be part of that. And I'm delighted to say, and anybody can follow on social media and see these results too, but they were successful in trapping and capturing and relocating 40 ewes, and 80 some percent of them were pregnant. So there were wildlife veterinarians there doing ultrasounds, so they know how many were pregnant. So there's going to be new lambs born here in the next few months. So that's awesome. And the goal was for 40 rams. They were able to get 37. And then it was really exciting, Kyle. I was obviously I'm not a wildlife professional, so not appropriate for me to have any sort of sampling job, right? But I learned that recorders are really important to the team. So there were 4 tables. Each one had a wildlife veterinarian assigned to it to lead it, and then a number of wildlife professionals, and then a person like me, say, who is really good at recording things. There's statistical data that has to be captured on every sheep. That's really important, from the serial number and the radio frequency on the collar to the ear tag numbers and colors to body temperature the moment the sheep hits the table to the moment they're off the table, to whether they're pregnant, what health they're in, which is assessed by a professional, but that data was given to me as a recorder. So that was my role. I was on table 3. I had a great team. I learned so much. I knew nothing. I'd never done a wildlife project like this. Everything was new to me. I learned a ton. It was super emotional to see the helicopter coming in with those sheeps in slings. And it was emotional to see them on the table. I was able to get hands on a few sheep a couple times. That was amazing. And then to follow the trucks to El Paso for the release was unbelievable. It was just tremendous to see these 77 sheep released onto the near landscape.
That's awesome. So, I think back of, what's happened here. So we look at a guy like Clay Brewer, right? So obviously Clay would have been there. I haven't seen any pictures.
I didn't make it. He was supposed to, but he
Okay.
not able to at the last moment.
Okay. So, look at a guy like Clay that's worked for Texas Parks and Wildlife for decades, and then he retired. And then the Wild Sheep Foundation brought him on to to work to do the great work he's done on bighorn sheep. So amazing work there. We look at a guy like Sam Cunningham, president of TBS, the involvement there, and then the foundation. The board of directors and the Wild Sheep Foundation approved. I think it was the grant aid was $302,000 to this project. Pretty safe to say without the foundation, it would have been pretty hard to get this project done. There was so much funding there. So this truly is epic shit. Amazing stuff. And like you said, I talked to Sam after the capture, and like these Aoudad are literally like just circled. They've circled Elephant Mountain, and there's a disease event coming. There's zero conjecture it's happening. And had those sheep, that clean herd, not been relocated, it would have been really, really, really catastrophic.
This episode is sponsored by our conservation partner, Precision Optics. Thank you, Sitka Gear and Precision Optics, for investing in healthy wildlife and sustainable ecosystems.
Okay, Renee. So you got to do the recording. Now on the release, I understand there was a lot of people at the release. It was like there was a huge turnout, lots of interest in this project.
There was a lot of interest. To your point, when you were talking just earlier about the Aoudad surrounding Elephant Mountain, and it wasn't a question of if, it just when a disease incident would happen, right? So, there was some controversy, I understand. There are some El Paso residents who are not excited about having desert bighorn sheep introduced into the Franklin Mountain ranges. So there was some political considerations. So yes, there was high levels of interest from all sorts of special interest groups on the pro and the con side, and then for people who were more focused just on the conservation of the species, so much stress and interest about whether or not these 77 sheep were healthy. So I forgot to mention that, there was I understand, a very generous private donor in Texas, a member of TBS, and I think the Wild Sheep Foundation, who generously donated their private plane. And when we sampled all the sheep, those samples were flown immediately up to Waddell in Washington State and tested for MOVI, and they were clean. I mean, you cannot imagine the relief that all the volunteers on the project, and I'm sure other stakeholders that weren't there, just this tremendous relief that these sheep were healthy, And so, when we went to the release site, Froyland's been sending some updates, and last I saw in an email update from him, we thought there was maybe 300 people there, but the estimate was low. There were about 600 people there for the release.
Wow.
And there was media everywhere, people getting interviewed left, right, and center. So there was a real buzz, and but the energy was lovely. And, the professionals working the release site with Texas Parks and Wildlife had asked all these hundreds of people to please try to remain quiet as they released the sheep. So it was already a stressful enough time for the sheep, last thing they needed was clamoring humans, right? So people were pretty silent while there were 6 trailers of sheep, while all 6 trailers were unloaded. But when that last group of sheep came off the final trailer, there was a huge outcry of cheering from the people there to witness it, and that's when it got loud. It was wonderful.
When was the most emotional part for you? Was it when you were doing the work? I guess you're working, so you're focused. Was it when the release was done and the sheep were running and there was that cheer? Was that the emotional part for you? When was it most impactful to you? Where you're like, wow, we're doing some pretty amazing stuff here?
There were a few moments, Kyle. For me, seeing the first 3 helicopter sling loads that came in, I cried the first 3 times. Like, it was really emotional for me. I didn't bawl, but I got teared up. And the first few sheep who hit our table in group 3, I got really emotional too. Just to see a wild sheep. It was right next to me. It was tremendous. But I think if I really think about, I think the greatest emotional moment I had was the news on the day of the release that all 77 sheep were clean. That was the greatest emotional release. That pressure everybody was feeling, had the news been different, it would have been a very well, it just would have rolled out differently, right? As we know what we have to do when there's six sheep, right? So, um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. That's you've asked me a hard question. It was emotional for three ways for me, but the capture, the first few captures, the news that they were clean, and then the release was super emotional as well. And we did have one mortality. There was a ewe who had, so we, in fact, 41 ewes had been captured, but there was one mortality. She had, not due to the capture, it was an older injury, but she had broken off one of her horns, and it was a very deep break. And what I learned from the veterinarians is that sometimes when a horn breaks off, it's not very deep and it's okay, and the sheep can remain healthy. But if it's a very deep break like that, where it's past the keratin, the cavity was filled with maggots. She was very sick, so she's not going to survive. So that was also an emotional moment. None of us like to see a suffering animal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. This is such a celebration for our community because wild sheep they're always struggling, and there's not a lot of feel good stories out there. And we've seen, we think of like back to the 60s where they said there was 25,000 bighorn. Now there's north of 85,000, whatever that number is. But we're still seeing declines. Texas is getting kicked. And, we look at the Fraser River back here in BC, and we see these population declines, and we're so passionate about it, but there's no policy. And then, in BC, where we've got low numbers, we don't even have a healthy herd to transplant from. There's nowhere to take sheep from. So, and these transplants it's such a feel good thing because you're actually doing something, but we've kind of not done that. Like I've kind of really only been heavily involved the last 8 or 9 years. And the number of transplants I recall are there's so few, right? So it's amazing to do this, and it's so exciting. And it's so good for our community, even if it's just Texas, not just Texas, but it's maybe not in our backyard, but for as us as a community, a family, it feels really, really good.
You're absolutely right. And you were speaking earlier about great men like Clay and also Sam Cunningham, and contributions that members of the Wild Sheep Foundation and our CNAs have done to make sure that the Wild Sheep Foundation was able to significantly sponsor this effort. And members should feel proud. Our community should feel proud, and they all had a direct impact, whether you were there or not. And Texas Parks and Wildlife did a really, really good job of acknowledging Wild Sheep Foundation and Texas Bighorn Society, and publicly stating, whether it was to the group of volunteers during the briefing or whether it was during media interviews, the fact that WSF and its larger community was the reason why it happened. So they did a great job in not just acknowledging that, but getting the word out. So that's good too.
Yeah, it's great. And I'm sure for someone like Gray, it must just feel so good to see, and I know for years there were transplants, and then we were like, oh, these sheep are not healthy and we couldn't do it. And we all want to do these transplants, but is it the right thing to do? And there has been transplants done that they probably shouldn't have been in retrospect, right? Like if we're speaking honestly, and to see it done in the right way, to see it done to an area, it must be really, I haven't had a chance to talk to Gray, but since the capture, but I'm sure it must feel so amazing for him. And I'm sure the board of directors is super proud of what they've achieved too.
Yeah, for sure. And, I know he'd love to talk to you about it. He unfortunately wasn't able to be there. He was supposed to be part of the volunteer team, but there was an emergency within his family that he had to manage. So he really regretted not being there, but he was delighted with the outcome, and everybody was keeping him up to date in real time. And of course, he was very relieved and happy, just like any of us. And I think, to Chairman Landris's point, it was epic shit, and
Yeah.
and so worthwhile. And I know for myself, I'm excited to find out how this herd makes out.
Yeah. It's going to be really exciting to see what happens to the Elephant Hill herd as well. Like, it's going to be interesting, and hopefully hopefully it's good. Hopefully but there's still sheep there, right? They didn't capture everything. Yeah. Right.
Oh, there are still sheep there. there's sheep at risk, but Kyle, for your information and your listeners' information, I heard a lot of chatter from the Texas Parks and Wildlife folks working there about other strategies that they're trying to figure out in the great state of Texas to hopefully overcome the issue and the challenge with the Aoudad while respecting the private landowner's rights to manage business, right? So it is complex. But they have some ideas, and I hope they can find a way forward so that herds like the ones that still exist on Elephant Mountain and other places have a shot at surviving.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had a brief chat with Sam post the capture, and he said, yeah, they've kind of got a strategy for dealing with the Aoudad, but yeah, you're right. It's so complicated. And I can't even, one thing that I learned, because we had the CNA summit in San Antonio, and TBS hosted it, and they did a really good job of explaining the issue. But, just you could literally kill hundreds of Aoudad every day, and they're still like, it's not even going to make a dent in the population. Like, it's so complicated. And then there becomes this whole thing about, there's mass culls and stuff. Of course, it's an invasive species, but it's complicated, right? There's so many, and then private land, and just the list goes on and on and on and on. So yeah, I don't even begin to understand what's happening there. So
No.
yeah, awesome. Well, Renee, it's been so much fun. We could go on for hours and hours and hours, and but we'll save it for the next one. So thank you so much for connecting. We're just rolling into Christmas here. I'm not sure when we're going to drop this. It'll probably be right around Christmas time. But thank you so much. I want to wish you and Gray a very Merry Christmas. And I think I'm still allowed to say that. Maybe I'll get some hate mail on the podcast. But anyway, c'est la vie. And
Yeah.
yeah. But no, really excited about it. And we're a month away. I get to see you in Reno. So really excited about that. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kyle. This was a great chat. I always love talking to you, as I said, and very Merry Christmas to you and Melanie and your boys. And look, really, really forward to seeing you in Reno.
Awesome. Thank you.